The third date. My friend told me this horrific story yesterday, and it has to be the scariest thing I've ever heard. I felt like sharing it to remind everyone to stay safe and cautious. This happened to a friend of a friend not too long ago. This girl matched with a guy on Tinder and went on a couple of dates with him. For the first 2 dates, they went for coffee and walks outside. She really liked him. She thought he was friendly, good-looking, and felt they truly clicked. For the third date, the guy suggested she come over to his place for some wine. She agreed because she felt safe and comfortable enough to do so by that point. When she arrived at his place, he poured her a glass of wine. Things seemed to be going well. They joked around and enjoyed a nice talk. However, after a while, she started feeling funny. Luckily, this girl had been roofied once before, so she immediately recognized the effects as they kicked in. She was incredibly clever. She pretended she was feeling fine and told him as cheerfully and energetically as possible that she was quickly going to use the bathroom, so as not to tip him off. Once inside the bathroom, she locked the door and immediately called the police. She told them she had been drugged, was locked in the toilet, and that they needed to come get her out of there. Pretty soon after, she passed out. She was awakened by the police, but because she was still heavily drugged, she kept sliding in and out of consciousness. All she remembered from that moment was the police putting a bag over her head as they carried her out. She was saved. A few days later, she was asked to come down to the police station to give her formal statement. After doing this, she asked the officers if she remembered correctly that they put a bag over her head, or if she had imagined it due to the drugs. The officers told her that they had indeed put a bag over her head. They decided it would have been too traumatizing for her to see what he had prepared and set up for her in the living room as they carried her out. This sends shivers down my spine. The guy ended up in jail, and to this day, she doesn't know exactly what he had in mind for her, but it's clear this was a very messed up, incredibly scary situation that could have ended horribly. Please, please, please always let someone know when you plan on going on a Tinder date, even if you feel safe and even if it's not your first date. Always ask a friend to call and check up on you during and after the date to ensure you are safe. Number 2, the woods are not empty. I've always been a skeptic. I believe there is a natural explanation for almost anything. But what happened this past weekend has me sitting awake at 5 a.m., unable to find a logical thread to pull. My friends and I decided to head into a local stretch of UK woodland for a nostalgic camping trip, something we hadn't done since before the pandemic. I'm the most experienced outdoorsman of the bunch, so I led the way, carrying the heavy gear like the axe, machete, and cooking tools, while my friends handled the food and beer. My plan was to take us to a spot I'd used during COVID. It was a very specific location marked by a distinctive Y-shaped tree and an old, rusty wheelbarrow I'd once repurposed into a makeshift fire pit. However, despite following my old tracks, we couldn't find it. The woods seemed to have swallowed it whole. With daylight fading around 6 p.m., I gave up the search and we set up a secondary camp. We got the fire roaring, cracked some beers, and settled in for the night. Around 11 p.m., one of my mates decided he didn't want to rough it after all. I agreed to navigate him out of the woods to the main road while our other friend, a guy built like a tank, stayed behind to keep the fire going. I told him to keep the flames high so I could find my way back easily. I successfully escorted my friend to the road and turned back into the darkness. I was about halfway back to camp when I heard it. A male voice making a beckoning sound to my left. It sounded somewhat like my friend at the camp, but something felt fundamentally off about the tone. I didn't shout back, I just kept moving toward the flicker of the fire. When I reached the camp, I found my friend visibly shaken. He hadn't been shouting, but he told me he'd heard someone, or something, laughing from the exact direction where I'd heard the beckoning voice. I tried to stay rational, reminding him that we were two large men armed with an axe and a machete. But then a massive metallic clang echoed through the trees from the darkness. It was loud, heavy, and undeniable. We didn't wait for a second sound. We doused the fire, packed our valuables, and decided to haul tail out of there. I chose to lead us back along the same path I had literally just walked 10 minutes prior. That's when the logic of the night completely broke. There, sitting directly in our path, was the rusty wheelbarrow I'd been searching for all evening. It had the same distinctive hole and the same charred interior from my fires 4 years ago. I had just walked this exact line moments before, and it absolutely was not there. Even more chilling, sitting right beneath it was a single black rubber-tipped glove, the exact kind my friend had been wearing when I walked him to the road. We didn't touch the glove. We didn't even speak. Just as we began to move, a deafening metal bang erupted behind us, sounding like a sledgehammer smashing into iron. We broke into a full sprint, eventually vaulting a fence and escaping onto a well-lit street far from where we had originally entered. Later, I called the friend I'd escorted home. He confirmed he was safely in bed with his girlfriend, but he was confused. He realized he'd left his gloves back at our original campsite. How one of those gloves ended up miles away, tucked under a wheelbarrow that appeared out of thin air on a path I'd just cleared, is something I can't explain. I know those woods, and I know someone, or something, was playing a very dark game with us.